Planning and Growth Management Commission minutes is amended for May 31st, 2023.
See a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, the second one is the minutes for the workshop of May 31st, 2023. Are there any changes? Okay, would you like to seek approval?
Commissioner DeChristopher, for the record, Madam Chair, I move we approve minutes for the Planning Commission workshop of May 31st, 2023.
Okay, second.
I second.
Thank you. Vote, all approve? Aye. Any disapprove? Okay, passed. Thank you. All right, and that seems to brings us on to the meeting items. First one is being 6A, AB 2023-0203 for possible action discussion regarding a request from Michael Mistral, applicant, for a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors concerning the abandonment of a public access easement plus minus 47,360 square feet in size to accommodate the development of an approved 130-lot residential subdivision, SUB 2021-0399, located approximately 0.27 miles northeast of the eastern terminus of East Robinson Street within the Lampa Ranch North Specific Plan Area and Zoned Multifamily Duplex, MFD-SPA, Assessors Number APN 010044142. Heather.
Good evening, Heather Manzo, for the record. So this request was brought forward by the owner of the property for Lampa Ranch North Phase 3. That's a tentative map that was approved maybe a little over a year ago now. So as they're moving forward with their permitting and design process, this access easement was identified, and it doesn't line up with the roadway network that was approved with the plan. And so the applicant is requesting abandonment of the easement. Because it's an easement and not a right-of-way, it's undeveloped land, really the only impact is that this easement would no longer exist. It was established in 1983, and I anticipate it was probably intended to have an east-west connection that when the freeway came in, that connection is not really possible anymore. So staff was able to make all of the findings which relate to this, and staff is recommending approval of their request. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Madam Chair, I had one. In the findings, when you turn the page over on page 2 of your staff report, you identify 4 findings. In the next agenda item, item 6B, there are 5 agenda items, or 5 findings, conditions of approval. And it says the applicant shall be responsible for all recording fees for this abandonment request. So is that not applicable to this one?
It certainly is.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So Heather, that would be added to this?
Yeah, if Commissioner Cron wants to add that as a condition through a motion, then that would work.
Okay, is the applicant here? Okay,
It doesn't appear so.
it doesn't appear so. So we don't know if he can agree to the conditions, especially when
It's
it's amended.
customary. Yeah, this is a customary item for the applicant to pay for the recording fees. So I can probably speak for them that they would be okay with that.
Okay. Send it back to the board. Commissioner Cron, do you want to tackle that?
Yeah, I can tackle that.
Well, we can't put the motion yet until we have public comment, but I just wanted to make
Yeah, no,
sure that
I'm
you're,
ready.
you're ready. Okay. All right, I'd like to open this up for public comment, please. Yes, I am.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I appreciate the opportunity to talk today, Chair and Commissioners.
I need you to talk into the microphone, please.
Chair and Commissioners, I have several options as far as speaking since I don't know who spoke first since I'm late. And if I'm the first one, I want to say I'm throwing my hat in as a supporter of a consideration for another property assessor. They could use one, I think. And so I'll be a lobbyist for them today, I guess, if that were what you might call me. But also, I am concerned about any changes, especially to places that are to be abandoned, especially on this particular property. I just came from this assessor's office. Looks to me like it was a very strategically set situation for support of new development. And the one coming off of Robinson going towards Highway 50, that's a wow, when you're late, you're late. Anyhow, I'll probably have more comments about it, but it's the property, I think it's 6A that I'm talking here.
Yes, we are.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we are talking about 6A.
You are, good, good. So at least I'm on time on that. The way it looks like it's coming in would be from Robinson, consideration for a road up to and over to that easement. First off, I'm opposed to it because I feel like it's a bit of a contrived circumstance. It's been saved and there was no real access to it otherwise, so I'm not sure how it was considered an easement. So that was a concern. And then the fact that there's several property owners and the two that the one that I could find was a contractor, which is fine, a developer, not a problem, but I've had trouble finding the others. And so my comment is I wouldn't be for it. And it's not because I want to be selfish, but I think it should really get something for its efforts. It's been there. It's established as an open space, sort of, and that it could be used as a bug oasis. I know anytime we bring up bugs, that may not be good, but just for water retention and for other considerations that property should be considered for. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none. Okay. And I'm going to bring it back over to staff in case the board has any questions. Commissioner, any questions? No? Okay. And then,
Ready, okay. I move to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the abandonment of the public access easement based on the findings and subjects to the conditions of the approval contained in the staff report, with the inclusion of a fifth condition of approval, which states the applicant shall be responsible for all recording fees for this abandonment request.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
yeah, there's a second. I'm sorry. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay,
Nay.
okay, then that one passes. Okay, and the next item is 6B. 6B for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a request from Larry Stock, applicant, for a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors Board concerning the abandonment of a 50-foot wide by plus minus 607.2 foot long portion of Deer Run Road totaling plus minus 33,827 square feet in size, located along the frontage of two parcels zoned General Industrial GI, Assessor Parcels Number APN 008541-91 and 008541-59.
Good evening, Heather Manzo for the record. So this request was brought forward in anticipation of a potential development of these two vacant parcels. In looking at Deer Run Road, this section of Deer Run is 200 feet wide. As you look on this map further to the northwest, you can see Deer Run gets a lot narrower. So what's occurred over the years is there have been portions of Deer Run that have been abandoned, noting that the city doesn't need a 200-foot wide right-of-way. That's pretty extensive. I don't have the background for this, but my anticipation was that this was anticipated to be a main road, possibly NDOT road back in the past, but that obviously didn't occur. And so staff has evaluated the request and is recommending approval of the abandonment, subject to the findings that are in the staff report. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, and is the applicant here? Okay. And I do have a question too, before I address you. I do have a question too. Is that particular piece of property, if you show the other picture you had up before, please? Okay, over in the area, at the thick area towards the south, there is a gate somewhere along there that is actually the access for the open space to the, what they've named the Cottonwood Galleria. Gallery, and my question is there still going to be an access for the city of Carson to go in there and clean and mitigate that Cottonwood Gallery? Okay. Okay, sorry.
We have no plans of deleting that part at all, the access. In fact, right now, there's a big tree blocking the access that needs to be dealt with in some way.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I need to have your name for the record, please.
Oh, Larry Stock.
Great, thank you. So, but is there going to be any kind of a recorded easement on there, anything that the city vehicles can go through there and maintain that Cottonwood Gallery? And this, I think, is back to Heather. Okay, just one sec.
Stephen Poteo, Development Engineering for the record. The access in question is south and east of the abandonment area, so that will still be accessible.
South and east.
Mhm.
Okay.
It goes parallel to North Deer Run Road, that's why it kind of
Okay,
loops
so it's
around the
parallel to
corner.
North Deer Run, but it'll be still right there in that little area that's,
There's actually a pullout area just south of the property where I believe there's a turnout area, and that's where there's a gate to go down into it. And I think that's still going to be in your easement zone for Deer Run.
okay. All right, that was just the only question that I had, so I do know that one. Is there any other questions from any of the other commissioners?
I had a couple questions related to the parcel. I didn't know if you wanted to continue with his, accepting the conditions in here or not. You kind of got started and they got distracted, so.
Well, I'm sorry. No, the thing is that I think that we need to have your questions too.
First?
In case, yeah.
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, so I don't know who would be the best one to answer these questions. These have to refer to the exhibits that Loomis have provided within the packet. But these questions these questions pertain to both parcels. Hello, sir.
Hi, Brian Moon with Loomis and Associates. Excuse me, Loomis and Associates for the record.
Hi, Brian. How are you tonight?
Great.
Hey, are you the surveyor on this?
I am not. I am the engineer.
You're
for
the
it.
engineer, okay.
Yes.
Just some clarification for me. Are the PUE, the 10-foot PUE and the 30-foot relocatable easement adjacent to each other, consisting of taking 40 feet out of the 50-foot abandonment, or do they overlap, which means it's just 30 foot that's being reserved for an easement out of the 50-foot being abandoned? Does that make sense?
Commissioner Cron, I can answer that for you.
Okay.
So the 10-foot PUE is required along all property frontages. So that's a code standard, which is why it's not really shown on the proposed abandonment area. And then the 30-foot sewer easement, which is the one that's relocatable, that one, we asked the applicant to kind of make their best guess on where a sewer alignment may be. And so that's what this depiction shows. And it does show part of that 30 feet is actually going out into the right-of-way based on the alignment of the sewer. So that can all change once it goes to design and we know the depth of the line and where it's going to be located. So that's why we identified it as a relocatable easement. And that is not in addition to the 10 feet. It's actually just its own 30-foot easement. So that'll start generally at the property line on the frontage and then go back 30 feet from there.
Okay, all right. I wasn't clear. I was trying to just kind of piece that together from the exhibits. And then in the abandonment area, there are no utilities currently?
So there are utilities in the area being banned. That's the reason for the easement.
Oh, okay, all right. And then the other question I had, the existing 7.5 foot PUE that's existing, will that go away in time?
So Heather, for the record again, I did speak with the surveyor on this because I had the same questions. And so there's a 7.5 foot along the frontage, and then there's also the PUE that goes between the two parcels. And what they're looking at are a couple different design options. One of them may be a reversion map to combine the parcels. So because they don't really have a plan set in stone at this time, they left those PUEs in place. And when development does occur, they will have to correct those and have them removed or relocated.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. And Mr. Stock, you have read the conditions of approval and you accept them? Okay, great. Thank you. And bring it back to the board. Are you ready for a vote? Okay. Do you want to do it soon?
Was there
Yeah.
public comment already on this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, is there any public comment? Sorry about that.
Denny French, Carson City. Thank you, Chair. The commissioners and planning, if you've got these questions and I'm public and I don't have access to those answers necessarily, is it the right time to be voting for or against it? I mean, I don't really feel like I've had the opportunity with now having the new information to really review this site. And so personally, I like the view as it is. So that's just me, and that's really just very selfish. But to even think of a development at that point on that road just seems inappropriate. So thank you very much.
Thank you. State your name.
Maxine Neitz, for the record. Just a quick question. If you don't know where the sewer line is, why are you even considering this item? If nobody knows where the sewer line is, why are you even considering this? Why doesn't this item wait until a survey is done and you know where the sewer line is? I mean, obviously, they're not ready to build, so it's not a crunch. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Heather Manzo for the record. So regarding the sewer easement, the reason that the easement's being proposed is because there is no sewer along the frontage at this time. So looking at this view, at that intersection on the left-hand side of the map is where the sewer line ends. The only reason that it would need to extend along the property frontage is to serve these two properties. So the sewer will be installed when the site's developed.
Okay, thank you.
Add on to that. Stephen Pote for the record, just one slight clarification. On the north side of the abandonment, there is existing sewer, and we did get an exhibit showing the location of that, but the sewer main will need to be extended in the future, so that's the majority of the sewer main easement is a future extension of the sewer main.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, I'd like to go for a motion, please. Ellen?
Commissioner DeChristopher, for the record, I recommend we move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approve the abandonment of the public access easement based on the findings and subject to the conditions of the approval contained in the staff report pertaining to file number. Is that what we need, or for identifying it, Madam Chair?
It's right down below on the amendments. I'm sorry, on the agenda.
Oh, my
see.
apologies.
Oh, well, recommended motion, just right here.
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
I have to get back to the agenda.
Just moving for the approval.
Yeah, apologies. I thought I grabbed the agenda and I don't have it.
Commissioner Christopher, you're referring to the request for abandonment AB 2023-0243, which is item 6B, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So there's a motion.
Okay. All in favor?
There we
Okay, I'm
go.
sorry. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, motion passes.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Now, on to agenda item number 6C, ZA 2023-0184 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors Board concerning a request from Carson City applicant for a proposed ordinance amending the zoning map to change the zoning of a property from public regional PR to single-family 6,000 square feet, SF6 on a plus minus 0.07 acre property located on Fleshman Way, plus minus 275 feet to the west of its intersection with North Division Street, APN 001-14167.
Thank you. Heather Manza for the record. Okay, so this request, as well as a couple other ones later this evening, are really based on the fact that NRS 278190 requires the city to do an annual evaluation of our master plan to identify areas that may not be in conformance with our master plan. So once a year, this time it was in December, the Planning Commission reviewed the properties in which may not be in conformance with the master plan. And a recommendation was made to forward that list to the board, and the board asked staff to go ahead and initiate those items. So this is one of several map amendments that you'll be seeing tonight and also in the future months. So we did the annual review, and on this property specifically, which is on the north side of Fleischman and located to the west of Division Street, it is currently improved as a parking lot that historically had served for overflow parking for the Carson Tahoe Hospital on the south side of Fleischman. Again, once a year, staff conducts an annual review of the master plan and identifies those master plan and zoning map changes that may need to be modified to conform to the master plan. The subject site was identified because the current zoning of PR does not conform with the master plan designation of medium-density residential. So on this screen here is the master plan for this general area. Medium-density residential is located on the north side of Fleischman, and then there's mixed-use residential to the south and also to the east. With this project, the reason that it was recommended to come back for a zoning map amendment is because PR is really designed for government facilities and historically speaking, the Carson Tahoe Hospital was kind of a co-effort between Carson City and the hospital. That's not the case any longer. This is not a publicly owned property, it's privately owned. And in doing our review of the master plan, there are only 4 conforming zoning districts for that master plan designation of medium-density residential. So our choices to make it conforming with the master plan are SF6, MH6, SF12, or MH12. And the reason that SF6 was specifically identified for this parcel is because it would conform with the rest of the neighborhood on the north side of Fleischman. So we don't generally do spot zoning, which is, putting a zoning district in where there isn't a like district surrounding it. And so in this case, really looking at our 4 options, SF6 is the only option that we would be recommending. So that's what staff is recommending is SF6 zoning on that parcel, and that'll be conforming with the master plan and also consistent with the neighborhood. And we did receive one public comment who noted that this property has some restrictions that they identified in the late materials that you received. Those are on record. The mapping change will not affect the validity of any restrictions that are already placed on this property. This is truly just a map cleanup to conform with our master plan. So staff is recommending that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to approve the zone map amendment to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may. Hope Sullivan, Community Development Director. I want to respond to some of the public comment that you heard at the beginning. And the 2 things I want to respond to is sort of the sense of urgency or lack of urgency and why now. And the second was, how was this initiated? The second one's easier, the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors annually looks at the master plan and identifies mapping corrections that are necessary and directs staff to pursue those. So that's where this is coming from. Why the urgency? This commission knows, and I know, and the planners know, that we've all sat in meetings where there's a problem where somebody's pursuing a development and the master plan saying something inconsistent with the zoning. And what are you always looking for? Master plan consistency. That's always your first finding, master plan consistency. And I mean, Heather Manzo explained this, but this is a classic case where we don't have master plan consistency. The master plan says this should be medium density residential. It's a parking lot today. It can be a parking lot forever and ever. We're good. You can maintain the parking lot, not a big deal. But should that parking lot go away and it go to redevelop, we want the redevelopment of that land to be consistent with the master plan. Is that land going to redevelop tomorrow, in a year, in 10 years, in 25 years? I have no idea. But I'm not going to wait around and have somebody say, well, gosh, Hope, why didn't you fix the zoning so it would be consistent with the master plan? What we do annually is we look for those inconsistencies or errors, and we pursue corrections. And I think the timing is perfect on this because we found an inconsistency. As Heather explained, all private restrictions stay intact and stay in force. This does not compromise those at all. And it creates a situation where should the land redevelop, it will redevelop consistent with the master plan. Thus the timing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the commissioners? Seeing none, is the applicant here? The applicant is the Board of Supervisors, okay.
Yes, so
great,
staff is carrying this forward as requested.
perfect. And then may I please have public comment?
Yes, Betsy Strasberg, I did ask about the urgency. The owner of the property is Carson Tahoe, and when I spoke to them in February, they said they had no intention of selling that property, but that was February. Things change, and they are consolidating, so it may not be a parking lot for long. And the property on a mountain right across from the chillers, was sold. So I think that the applicant should be doing the request, not the city, because then we will know specifics about how they want to develop the land from them, not this down the road, it could be anything, it could be any time, etc. The second, the lane circle houses are 12,000 square feet homes, as I understand it. So just picking one parcel, which the city changed to SF6 sometime last year, and making that as a example for making this parcel SF6, I don't think it makes much sense. It should be a wider population than just the next door, and especially the lane circle, which is an existing neighborhood. Also in the public comment, it says that property owners were given notice. I live very close to this area, and I do not remember getting any notice that this was being considered. So this section on whatever page it is, page 2, I do contest. So I do believe that is a great idea to do housekeeping, but the housekeeping should be done with the applicant here and some understanding of what the future of this property is going to be. Carson Tahoe has closed many urgent care locations in the last 6 months, and so I don't think that we should make this change without knowing what the future of this property is going to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maxine Neitz, I want to start by saying I agree with Mrs. Strasberg that having the city preempt the owner of the parcel and make a zone change without agreement, without notification from the owner, without any documentation from the owner of the parcel is really not the kind of city we want to be living in. Furthermore, the staff report says that this zoning change would allow for development without delays. Unfortunately, I don't believe it is the job of the planning department or this commission to make sure that developers can move ahead at lightning speed. It's your job to create a great small city. So you need to consider that and not just rush into something where you're making something smooth for some developer down the line. Furthermore, the staff report also states that the proposed zoning map amendment will not negatively impact existing or planned public services or facilities. We all know that that is not a true statement. I won't call it a lie, we'll just say it's not true. At the growth management meeting not too long ago, most of the city agencies stated that they cannot continue to provide good service without more money. We taxpayers, please take note, we taxpayers have no more money. And if any zoning is to be changed on this, it should be per a development request, and it should be consistent with the neighborhood, which is SF12, not SF6. We don't need you guys cramming more crap down our throats. Thank you.
Wow. Denny French, Chair and Commissioners. I have to concur with Hope on her considerations for making things run smoothly and fit in an orderly way. Unfortunately, I don't have the same idea of orderly, and so there's a conflict of interest there, even though I appreciate her efforts and all of yours. The last time I was at that location, it hadn't been tended in quite a while. I have not been there recently, but it looked to me like city and state and other places were taking care of it, not the owner. And so I didn't ever even know the owner until this came up. And shame on us. So I'm opposed to it in the fact that it seems like we shouldn't be setting things up the way we are, just literally having not said, hey, it's put through by Board of Supervisors. I appreciate that, but we didn't talk about putting it through as a community. It came now to you all, and we're facing it, and that's frustrating. It just doesn't seem transparent or understandable. So thank you very much for your considerations.
Good afternoon. Richard Nagel for the record. My concern are several, but one of the things is I don't think the city has standing because we need to find out who's going to develop it, what they're going to do, and what's going on. And I don't think we should write a blank check for that. The other thing is, why did they pick 6,000 instead of 12,000? Because medium density is from 6 to 12,000. So why wouldn't they set it 12,000 foot lots instead of 6,000? I mean, what's the postage stamp size housing got to do with anything nowadays? I mean, why are they trying to make it more profitable for what? I think it should be consistent with the zoning that's there and the houses that are there, which are more in the 12,000 foot range. So that would be consistent with what's going on there. The other thing is that most of the property there is residential office, okay? And so if that were a possibility, then that's a possibility, residential office. But I think that this is something that doesn't need to be done. And thank you much.
Hi, good evening. Karen Stevens for the record. I would concur with the people that have spoke before me. I am opposed to changing the zoning on the parcel on Flushman, and I won't go into all the reasons because they've already been addressed. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Okay, seeing none, bringing it back. Did you have any questions?
Sure, I would be happy to address some of the comments that had been made. So again, staff is tasked with complying with Nevada revised statutes to take a look at master plan conformance. And part of that is looking at our master plan and zoning map for the city. And so what we did in December of last year, so December 2022, is we brought forward Hope brought forward a list of potential properties that didn't appear to conform with our master plan. And in reviewing that list of properties, this and the other two projects before you this evening were identified as potentials for a map correction. So that your recommendation to the board was to go ahead and pursue those map modifications. The board on January 19th of 2023 saw the list, had their discussion, and asked staff to move forward with the map amendments to bring those sites into conformance with our master plan. So this is an annual reporting process. We do it every year. It's usually around the end of the year that we make that report to you, and throughout the year, we bring forward the map amendments. So all we're doing at this time is simply a color change on the map to conform with the master plan. I know that Richard had mentioned it, and maybe a couple other folks. Why not a different zoning district? The reason being is for medium density residential, which is the master plan designation, and that's what we're looking to be conforming with, there's only 4 zoning districts that can fit within that master plan framework. SF6, MH6, SF12, and MH12. Of those 4, there's only one zoning district that is within this neighborhood, and that's SF6. Now, I understand that the properties to the north and west of this site may be larger than 6,000 square feet, but the zoning for that whole area there to the west and to the north are all SF6. So this would be compatible with the zoning for those properties. So SF6 is what's been identified. The reason that it's not RO or SF12 is because RO doesn't conform with the master plan, and SF12 would be a singular parcel of SF12 zoning within an SF6 area. So that is why staff made our recommendation. And then in terms of public facilities, I know that Maxine had made a comment about public facilities. This is not a request for development. This is only a zoning map amendment to conform with our master plan. Anything else, Chair?
No, I think that pretty much answers it because, I mean, it makes sense right now that it complies with everything that is around it except for the RO, but the RO actually has frontage on Division Street, which division has been primarily residential office previously for a long time, considering it was considered as support for the hospital when it was the hospital. So the residential office doesn't seem to be the right one either, even though that was brought up too. No, this is more, everything adjacent to this, except for the one parcel, is SF6. So, any other questions or? Okay, thank you.
You had mentioned that there were 4 different zoning for this particular area. There were 2 you didn't really talk much about, and they were multifamily, correct? No?
No, it's actually mobile home
Mobile
6
home,
and mobile home 12. So those are, all 4 of them are single-family zoning districts. One of them just allows for a primary mobile component to it.
So by identifying this as an SF6, if somebody did want to come in and, for example, put in a mobile home park or a mobile home there, they wouldn't be able to do it, correct?
I actually misspoke. It's manufactured housing or manufactured home. But no, a park, number one, the site's not big enough. And number two, it wouldn't be allowed.
Okay.
Based on, there's criteria in the code. So like I said, MH 6 or 12 wouldn't be appropriate to this because it doesn't conform with the zoning that's surrounding the property.
So even by process of elimination, you've ended up on SF6.
Exactly, that's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Commissioner Lloyd? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Brown. Sorry, back here. Okay. All right. And I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Borders.
Madam Chair, I'd like to report that I'm present.
Thank you.
I came into this discussion late, so I will not be voting on it. I don't think that's appropriate.
Okay.
However, I will say that that property is no longer and has not for a long time been owned by the hospital. The hospital is a leasee of facilities on that site, but they don't own that land anymore. The Carson Tahoe Continuing Care Hospital was leasing the second floor of that building.
No, we're talking.
This is a
parking
parcel
lot.
that's improved with just a parking lot on the
I
site.
understand, but what I heard earlier was that this is all owned by the Carson Tahoe Hospital, the parking lot and the lot across the street.
That's correct.
Not-
The owner of record for this property is Carson Tahoe.
Okay.
All right. Commissioner Lloyd, would you like to make a? Okay.
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the zoning map amendment ZA-2023-0184 as presented.
I'll approve.
Oh, I'll second.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. I'll approve. Any? Okay, and one abstain. Let's see. Motion passes. Okay. Now. Okay. I have a question on, and this is for you, Heather, is D and E the same ownership as F and G? And could they be done all together?
No, they can't. They need to be
Okay.
taken separately. So D and E can be taken together and then
Okay,
F and G can be taken together.
thank you. Okay, so we're going to do items 6D and 6E. MPA 2023-0185 for possible action and discussion and possible action regarding your request from Carson City applicant for the adoption of a resolution approving a master plan amendment and recommending approval of the amendment to the Board of Supervisors Board to change the master plan designation from open space and medium density residential to Parks and Recreation for a 10.15 acre parcel identified in the Lampa Ranch North Specific Plan area as a park site located on the east of the terminus of East Robinson Street and north of East Fifth Street. Assessors parcel number APN 010141-44. And do you want to read the other second one? Okay, ZA 2023-0186 for possible action and discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors Board concerning a request from Carson City applicant for the proposed ordinance amending the zoning map, change the zoning of a property within Lampa Ranch North Specific Area SPA from multifamily duplex MFD SPA to public neighborhood public neighborhood PNSPA for a 10.15 acre parcel identified in the Lampa Ranch North Specific Plan area as a park site and located in the east of the terminus of East Robinson Street and to the north of East Fifth Street. Assessors parcel number APN 010-4144. Heather.
Thank you. So as we discussed on the previous item, this property was identified through the annual review of the master plan that was brought forward to the Planning Commission in December of 2022 and then went to the board, and staff was directed to initiate these map amendments in January of 2023. So what this site is in the Lampa North plan. It's actually abutting Phase 2, which you'll hear later this evening. And this site has been long identified as a future park site in the Lampa Ranch North specific plan. So there's a handbook that goes along with this area. And as part of the plan for this site, I had an error in my staff report. I think it's on page 5, but what it says is on the 400th completion of the 400th home that the park site needs to be developed. It actually needs to be going for design and approval by the city by then, and then 750 is when the park site needs to be online. So I apologize for the error in the staff report. But the plan calls for this to be a city park sometime in the future. So this map amendment is just setting the stage for that use in the future. Right now, it's zoned multifamily duplex, and we wanted to bring this forward to be in conformance with that specific plan area handbook that's part of the master plan.
Okay. Once again, the applicant is the Board of Supervisors, correct? Okay.
I'm sorry?
The applicant is the Board of Supervisors.
That's correct. The board initiated this.
Okay, and I'd like to bring that back here to the commissioners, please. Any questions? Okay.
Hi, Heather. Do you know how many homes that they have completed to this point?
I don't know how many have been completed, but I do know that 60 residential permits have been issued. I would guess maybe half of those have been completed. And then there's also the multifamily, which is orange on this map. That's under construction right now. And that's another 360 multifamily units. So under construction, not vertical at this time, I don't believe.
Thank you.
Ready? I think this is pretty clear. See, I'd like to bring it for public comment, please.
Denny French, Carson City. Thank you, commissioners and chair. Thank you for your patience. This has been a tough one for me because I don't want it to change from what it is. But the deal is that I like it to stay open space. The reason for that is that manicured areas often have to have spraying and other considerations that open space would allow more open space. And it seems to me we're actually just putting in a park for the facilitation of those that are going to be living in the houses in the area, which is fine. I get that because we all are going to be able to have access to them if they are parks. But I would really like to recommend that we don't make everything that's open into parks or housing. And in this case, I'd have to suggest that I prefer not to have a park there for that reason. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further comment?
Betsy Strasburg. I don't know the genesis of why we are considering a park in that area. If it was part of a bigger PUD, then the park would have been part of the development. If it is currently open space, then as Mr. French said, to leave it as open space, because you know what? The city doesn't have any money. We have a $21 million deficit for road maintenance, and here we are designating a park which may or may not be developed anytime in the future because of the lack of funds in the city budget. Parks and Recs is probably the third highest budget center in the city. And Parks and Public Works is about what, $2.3 million? Parks and Rec is probably about $7.5 million. We should consider these development of future parks, and this will be my same comment to the next one that is under consideration when we fix the current infrastructure. Carson City has the highest per capita parks. I've seen that number somewhere, and when I checked with the park superintendent, he didn't know. So let's figure this thing out before committing more dollars to public infrastructure like parks, because we don't have the money to make the park and let alone fix it for maintenance down the road. Leave it as open space. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Hi, Karen Stevens for the record. And I'm having a really hard time hearing you, Terry. Maybe I should move up to the front row because it just sounds like you're mumbling. But you're not speaking very loudly into this speaker that I can ascertain. And I would just like to say that I would prefer open space as well. I can't believe the amount of money this city is in a hole, but now we're looking at new ways to spend more money. Our birds and deer and antelope, they all need open space as well as people, and instead of finding more ways to spend money that we don't have. So I am very opposed to this and any other ordinance that you want to change to make a park that we don't have money to upkeep. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment? Okay. Seeing none, bring it back to staff.
Sure, I'd be happy to address some of the public comments. So when we look at the open space master plan designation, yeah, part of it does have an open space designation, but we actually don't have an open space zoning to go along with that. So when looking at our master plan, this is already planned to be a park through the Lampa Ranch North specific plan. That was adopted in 2016. So this has already been set aside for a park site. In addition to that, all of the development on the west side of the freeway are contributing, each residential unit is contributing money toward the park site itself. And then on top of that, when it does get developed, so when 400 dwelling units are developed in the Lampa Ranch North SPA on the west side, when 400 are developed, the developer must bring forward a plan for parks approval for the design of the 10-acre park site. So that's the trigger for the design. Once 750 residential units have been completed, the park site will have to be online. It'll have to be fully functioning at that time. So this is something that was already set kind of in stone in our master plan in 2016. And so what these map amendments to the master plan designation of parks and recreation and the zoning change to public neighborhood are all just supporting that master plan document, the SPA, for the Lampa Ranch North plan. Again, this is a city-initiated request just to bring the site into conformance with our master plan, and it doesn't represent any development at this time. All it represents are changes to the colors on the map to conform with our master plan.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, 2 items. The planner's right in which she talks about conformity between the master plan and the zoning, but I want to expand on that, not necessarily for the commission's benefit, but for the public's benefit. Zoning's a tool. The master plan's our vision. It tells us how things should be developed. So on the last one you saw, the master plan said this should be medium density residential. Well, that's an interesting idea. The master plan says that. So, but how do you make that happen? You make that happen by having zoning that's compatible, consistent with the master plan, and the master plan identifies those zoning districts that are consistent with various master plan designations so that you can actually implement your master plan. As Heather explained, in 2016, before Heather or I were here, the city adopted a specific plan, the Lampa specific plan. It called out for this park location and the next park location. So we are saying, well, the specific plan, which is part of our master plan, says this should be a park. So the master plan map should say it's a park because we know it's supposed to be a park. And then the zoning should recognize that it's going to be a public neighborhood because that's compatible with a park. If we were to not do that and we were to leave the zoning multifamily duplex, someone, and it's not infrequent, goes to buy property and they don't look for a specific plan. They don't look for the master plan. They say, what's the zoning? Given the zoning, what can I do? So it's really, really important to implement the master plan, that the zoning be structured so that we can actually implement our master plan. And this and the next amendments are really, really important because we don't want anyone to misunderstand the expectations on this piece of land. And these are in private ownership, as I think Heather explained. And it's really important that they understand that these are supposed to be park sites and it's not multifamily duplex. So when we look at these, people are spending a lot of money based on the city's zoning and the city's policies. And it's really important that we correctly portray what the expectation is per the master plan so nobody thinks, oh, well, there's not development, so we don't need to really worry about the zoning. And then they come in and we say, oh, no, you can't do that because that's not what the master plan says. So these are actually really, really important items that you're taking up right now. Thank you.
Heather, and I know later on tonight, we're going to look at a specific or a tentative subdivision map for parts of this. In that documentation, and I believe it's in the same with these, isn't there a requirement that they provide in their CCRs for the care and feeding of these parks? Or are these going to be dedicated public parks? Nobody knows yet.
So there's a per unit contribution that goes toward parks, and then the developer will be required to develop the park. Once it's developed and it's been built out, it will be dedicated to the city.
Okay.
There is a method for the maintenance of the park to be done with private funds, though, through basically the development that triggered the need for the park to begin with. So there is a private funding mechanism, but it will be a city park.
Okay. So that the impact of the city should be negligible in the maintenance of a park out there.
That was the intent of the specific plan,
Yeah.
yes.
That's what I thought.
Great. Okay. All right, seeing no further discussion. Yeah,
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. I move to adopt resolution number 2023-PC-R-1, and I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the zoning map amendment ZA-2023-0186 as presented.
and I'll second. And all approve?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. Okay. Okay, now we're on to 6F and 6G. 6F MPA 2023-0187 for possible action and discussion and possible action regarding a request from the city applicant for the adoption of a resolution approving a master plan amendment and recommending approval for the amendment of the Board of Supervisors Board to change the master plan designation from mixed-use residential to mixed-use employment to parks and recreation. It should be enjoyment, it should be mixed-use employment? I'm sorry, that just threw me off. Okay, mixed-use employment to parks and recreation for a three-acre parcel identified in the Lampa Ranch North Specific Plan area as a park site located to the west of the intersection of Airport Road and Budeye Road. Assessor number, parcel number APN 010744101. And for possible action and discussion, possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors Board concerning a request for Carson City applicant for a proposed ordinance amending the zoning map to change the zoning of property within the Lampa Ranch Specific Plan Area SPA from single-family 6,000 square feet, SF6 SPA, and public regional PR to public neighborhood PNSPA for a 3-acre parcel identified in the Lampa Ranch North Specific Plan Area as a park site located to the west of the intersection of Airport Road and Budeye Road. Assessor parcel number APN 010741-01. Okay, Heather.
All right, thank you. Now I feel like I'm a little bit on repeat, but this was initiated by the Board of Supervisors after receiving a report from the Planning Commission in early 2023 to amend the map as a mapping correction based on our annual review of our master plan and conformance with the master plan. So the property is within the Lampa Ranch North Specific Plan on the east side of the freeway this time. And the master plan designation is mixed-use residential and mixed-use employment, and the zoning is SF6. So for this project, it is identified in the specific plan as a future 3-acre park site. However, if you look at the mapping, it's not really clear that that's what the intent is. So this was identified and initiated to bring the site into conformance with the Lampa Ranch North Specific Plan area. In the handbook, this will be, again, at the 100th unit. Planning for the park needs to have commenced, and then by the 250th unit on the east side of the freeway, the site will need to be fully functional. So this is really just setting the stage for the implementation of the Lampa Ranch Specific Plan. So mixed-use residential and mixed-use employment master plan would then become Parks and Recreation, and the appropriate zoning district for Parks and Recreation is public neighborhood. So that's what's before you this evening. It was initiated by the Board of Supervisors. It is a privately owned piece of property, and the owner has been in communication with me and understands that this is basically just a paperwork task at this time to bring it in conformance with the specific plan. So staff is recommending that the Planning Commission forward a motion to adopt the resolution and to forward a recommendation for the master plan and zoning to be accepted by the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Commissioner Purse?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Heather, this is like the other piece of property in the fact that there is no park there now. The city is not planning on building a park. The developer is going to be required to build a park. Once it's complete, it's going to be turned over to the city. The developer and the CC&Rs for that area will be required to maintain that park.
Yes, the intent is for a private funding mechanism for the maintenance, and everything else you said is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the commissioners? Okay, I'd like to bring it up for public comment, please.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I oppose it for the similar reasons as I did the last one. I would really like to encourage us to consider open space use. And I understand that it would help facilitate the developer's needs for a park or whatever they feel, but I think that we're forgetting about the species in the area that at the time are still finding that a very comfortable home. So thank you very much.
Maxine Neitz, I have no objection to this land being rezoned as potential future parks, but I'll tell you this, I'm going to be watching my property tax bill real close. And if there's an increase under the parks and recs, I'm going to be calling you, Mr. Borders, because you said there wouldn't be any. So stick to your guns.
My name is Mary Ann Humphrey, and I am currently living in an area where we pay for the park. Every homeowner pays once a year through our property taxes. And yeah, it's supposedly the city isn't paying for it, but they subcontract this out. And let me tell you, they do not do a very good job of maintaining this park. And all of us are paying almost $300 plus every year for this park. And it's not maintained well. So it sounds all nice and sweet, but it's not. And the city is still paying for this because they have to pay the subcontractors. So why do you say that the city isn't going to be accountable? Because they are in a way. You have complaints, you call the city. I don't know if they talk to these subcontractors. We've had 2 different ones. The ones we have now are really bad. So I don't know how. They are paid, so they must be getting paid through the city as a subcontractor. So I think it's great that we have parks. I'm glad we have a park in our area, but they're not maintained well. And we pay a lot of money in our property taxes every year for this. Now, supposedly it's supposed to end, but I don't think it will. We were told it was supposed to end in, 7 years or something like that, but I doubt we'll be paying this forever. So. And also, I really do wish you guys would listen to public comment and not just keep approving everything like we're not even here, because it's very frustrating. People take time out of their day to come and to express their opinions and views because we care about Carson City. And it's like everything we say or people have said, it's like total disregard. You guys just do whatever you want. Thank you very much.
Any further public comment?
Pepsi Strasburg. So I repeat myself from the previous comment, so I won't do it now. But one thing that struck me from what the last speaker said is that she thought, she's the owner, she thought that it would end after 7 years. What is that about? Who picks up the cost after the 7 years? I'm confused. Thank you.
In terms of Mary's comments, after the meeting, one of us can get with her and get her contact information for someone at the Parks Department, because if there's a park that's not being well maintained, if it's owned by the city, then it's something that our Parks team can follow up on that. In terms of Pepsi's comment about a temporary timeline, it's not pertaining to this request, so I don't have any information on that. Thank you.
I have a question for you. Is that when we do any kind of development that is this large, and I do remember as a citizen when Lampa was being discussed, was that the people asked for the parks, and they asked for parks to be in there. And I believe, wasn't it a condition of use that the developer had to set aside land for the park?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Right. Anything else? Okay. All right, I'm gonna take it to
Yeah,
you,
I'm ready to make a motion.
please.
All right, I move to adopt resolution number 2023-PC-R-2, and I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the zoning map amendment ZA-2023-0188 as presented.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Christopher. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Okay, going forward to 6H, SB 2000, SB 2023-0061 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding a request from Steve Thompson. There's no P, Thompson, I'll have to correct that. Applicant for a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors Board considering a tentative subdivision map known as Blackstone Ranch Phase 2 to create 204 single-family residential lots on plus minus 58.52 acre site within the Lampa Ranch North Specific Plan Area, SPA, Zone Single Family 6,000 square feet, SF6, SPA, and Multifamily Duplex, MFD, SPA, located at 2230 East Fifth Street, Assessor's Parcel Number APN 010044140.
Okay, Heather Manzo for the record. Okay, so this project is actually one that the Planning Commission and Board had seen a little over 4 years ago. So this was a previously approved tentative map for 204 units. And the applicant had even moved forward with some site improvement permits and some initial engineering permits for the development of one of the phases within this development. So that's all in motion. However, the tentative map had expired in October of 2022. So while there were site improvement permits being reviewed, the map had just expired. So the applicant became aware of the situation, and because there's not a way to extend the time on something that's expired, the applicant was required to go through the whole process over again of reapplying for the tentative map. So this plan is quite consistent with the previously approved tentative map for the Phase 2. And as we discussed a little earlier, on the northeast corner there is where that 10-acre park site is. So what this project has is actually, this is a cool map. Okay, so it's in the Lampa Ranch North Specific Plan. It's medium density residential, so the number of units totally conforms with both the specific plan and with the zoning district with where it's located. And this shows the kind of roadway configuration, which I kind of like. So the white areas on here are the extension of Robinson Street, as well as the construction of what was previously called the Spine Road. It's now called Matterhorn. So Matterhorn and the extension of Robinson, there's actually an active site improvement permit for the construction of that. The applicant's in to re-up the tentative map approval on this, and then we'll commence construction of the site improvements associated with the roadway extension, and then eventually develop the lots within this project. So the conditions of approval that are presented to you this evening have been updated to remove any code requirements that don't need to be said through conditions, because code is code and they have to meet it no matter what. And they've been updated to reflect the kind of updated development pattern that has been seen since Phase 2 was approved. So when Phase 2 came through before, Phase 1 hadn't been constructed yet. That's the Ryder and Lennar development to the west of this site. And the Phase 3, which is the northwest of this site, hadn't been approved yet. So some reports needed to be updated and some information has been updated. That's all reflected in the updated conditions. So if you were here over 4 years ago and saw this and there are some changes, that would be why. We're just looking at the project as it is presented today, given the current conditions. So with this, there are 204 residential lots that are proposed, and there is about 10, I think it's, 10.2 acres of common area that has been identified along that buffer area between the freeway and the proposed lots, as well as some access points to the drainage canals for maintenance, and the public improvements for landscaping and the multi-use pathway along Matterhorn. So this is, north is oriented to the left of this screen. I wanted to make it as big as possible because it's already kind of a lot. And so it's oriented a little bit differently than the previous map. But staff is recommending that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for approval of this request. We were able to make all of the findings, and the applicant is available if you have any questions or would like to hear from them. Thank you.
On condition number 22, what is an LMD?
Lisa McIsaac for the record. It is a landscape maintenance district.
Should we not say that before we use an acronym? I have a real problem reading, assuming that everybody understands all the acronyms. If you all if we will make it a practice to say it the first time, then there's never a question in anybody's mind what we're talking about. And that goes for the other thing. The other question I have goes back to Heather. On item number 18, and I've seen this through all these documents that we've looked at tonight. It says, after the 460th residential lot is constructed, who keeps the scorecard and where is it?
So that's a great question. The city ultimately is responsible for managing that number and when that trigger is met. However, we have asked the developers to produce that information as they come forward. So phase one's kind of easy because it's a total of 189 lots, but with the other two phases now in play, that number is going to be tougher to track. So yeah, we have put it on the applicants that as the development for phases 2 and 3 start coming online, that we have an accounting for each of the phases and how many units have.
I just don't think it's
I want to
fair.
add to that though, because we had a similar situation with Lampa, where Lampa's park had to be accepted by, I want to say like, I forget what, there was a number at the, I'm just going to make up a number, at the 500th unit, the park had to be accepted. And if the park wasn't accepted, we were not going to final any more units. And Stephen Pote, I think, witnessed what happened when that didn't all come together. And what happens in reality, and I appreciate what Heather's saying, but in reality, what occurs is when we start getting close, and when we start getting close means we're about within 80 units, I start tracking really closely with the permit techs who are out on the front counter of the building department, watching really carefully. We start communicating with the contractors to make sure this isn't going to be some big surprise. Everybody knows what's happening. So although it's good for the contractor to track it, when we get close, we start independently tracking as well because we have to change our practices. Thank you.
My concern is this says 460. If this applicant sold this to somebody else and we're really at 458, that's a real surprise to the new buyer. And
Right,
I just
and-
think we need somehow, because all of these are interrelated. They're all different developers. They all have different schedules. But we have in the specific plan put specific triggers in there.
What we also have is a recorded development agreement that goes with the successor in interest. Will show up in a title report when somebody purchases, which calls this out. So someone doing their due diligence, and we've already had this with people doing due diligence, will say, well, how many have been entitled already? For example, one of the big triggers that we're not even talking about tonight is the connection to William Street. And I think that's like what the 800th and 12th unit or something like that. And so what happens is somebody will go get their title report. They'll see there's a development agreement. They'll read the development agreement, see it impacts the parcel they're contemplating purchasing. And they'll see what the, I'll call them encumbrances are. And then they'll check with us and say, well, where are we in terms of development, and where is this, and how is this going to work? And they'll start having those conversations. So your point's well taken. And had we not had a recorded document, I'd share your concern. But with the recorded document, I feel like it's being communicated.
Okay. Well, I just think it's hard for us to look at this and say, okay, let's approve this plan. And I don't know where it's 460 or if we're at 287 or 103. And, there ought to be a scoreboard somewhere. That's all I'm saying.
100% agree.
Okay. That's all I have.
A question for Heather. Just to be clear, no site work has been done in this particular phase.
I drove by the site this morning to refresh myself because things are kind of ever-changing since Phase 1 is under development. So at this time, the roadway infrastructure is not under construction to extend Robinson and to construct Matterhorn. I have noticed that there's some stockpiling of some dirt material that I'm guessing came from Phase 1. I'm sure they have a permit for that. But no, there's no site work that's happening at this location at this time.
Okay, so when the permit basically expired, the city has not been giving approvals, and that's why you're back here.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what triggered the review is they had permits in and we discovered the map was expired.
Commissioner Lloyd, for the record, on page 5, item number 30, it talks about the park and the 400th residential unit. And I did ask you that question earlier, and you had made the comment that there was 300 and something apartments in construction and about 60 units, like home units constructed. So just a little bit of math. We're getting close to the 400.
So
Right.
we're actually not, because I think certificates of occupancy are once your permit's closed out and somebody can move into that residence. So we're probably around 30. I don't know what the exact number is, but I do know there's neighbors out there living in Phase 1 right now. So the 400 mark is based on certificate of occupancy. So that's move-in ready and signed off fully.
Okay.
So we're not really close, but it is, so the apartments haven't gone vertical yet. It's still, site work is being built there. So we're really not close to 400 C of O. But I will tell you, after speaking with all of the multiple developers and the property owner for the park site, everybody is very aware of these triggers and they're having conversations to work toward getting the design into the Parks Department.
Okay, thank you. Because with the apartment, I mean, that's going to add up real quick. So
It sure will. Yes, you're right.
Then Heather, I had a question too, is that this is one where we were really concerned about traffic and so forth. So prior to them actually turning dirt on one of the parcels, Matterhorn will be built and will be accessible to Fifth Street?
I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to kind of fill in the blanks that I leave, but it's my understanding they could start construction within the phases, but they wouldn't be able to get a C of O for a residence there. So I'll turn it over to Lisa to clarify if I'm...
Lisa McIsaac for the record. Heather is correct. So they will be able to get the site improvement permits approved. However, the city won't accept the improvements until Matterhorn is put in place per condition 16. So if Matterhorn is not constructed, they cannot get a CFO.
Okay, we're talking C of O. We're not talking about construction during the construction phase. Because I think one of the things that we dealt with back 4 years ago was the aspect of all of the traffic coming in from this area off of Robinson Street and trying to mitigate some of that traffic to go off Fifth Street. So it was not just coming right through the neighborhood, through Solomon and everything for this development and the other ones that are involved. So that's my question. Is Matterhorn to be built prior to actually turning dirt on the individual, on the individual lots?
How the condition is currently worded and how current policy is, they can start constructing the individual lots area, so the individual streets such as, I'm trying to see the street name, but those individual streets, they can start constructing it. However, in order to move anyone in, they are gonna have to have Matterhorn complete and accepted by the city.
Were you asking?
I think we're asking a
Chairperson
different
Preston,
question. I think-
about construction traffic?
Yeah.
I think it would probably be good to have the applicant come up and address that question in terms of what their construction plan is for the project.
That would be great.
I think 4 years ago, we considered having that done so that we could alleviate some of the construction traffic.
Mm-hmm. That's what I recall.
And while the applicant is signing in, I just want to make the comment that every street ends in Peak Drive.
For the record, I'm Steve Thompson with Ryder Homes. So go back to the question. I want to make sure I answer it the way that you asked.
I think what the question is that when we originally approved the original tentative map, was that there was a concern because there are several different developers all in the area and the amount of traffic that would be on Solomon and on Robinson Street. And then from some of the other parts. But the understanding that the way I recall it is that Matterhorn had to be built prior to building out all of the other different properties and so forth, because we were concerned on the construction traffic, everything going on Robinson all the way through.
Okay,
And so that's what the question is.
Okay, understood. So keep in mind, it's 204 lots. I mean, that's probably 7
Right.
years worth of development. So we would build Matterhorn with the first phase. We phase this into 3 different phases right now. There's a 2A, B, and C, which is the division of the third of each of the lots. So we would build, you're not going to get all 204 of those homes being under construction or those site being under construction at once. It's going to be phase 1. At that time, we'll start construction on Matterhorn and build that at the same time, is what our construction
as
plan
phase
is.
one?
We have to, yeah, because in the condition, you can't close a home in phase 1 or phase 2A is what we're calling it until Matterhorn is constructed.
Okay. Yeah, because we don't see phase 1, 2, or A or whatever. We're not
Yeah,
seeing
I'm just
any of
explaining
that. We're
our
just saying
construction phase.
is-
We would never go, we control all that land. We would never go construct all 204 lots at one time.
I don't think that's the concern. The concern is that when we approved it before, and we had quite a bit of public comment and so forth, and there was a concern that all of the traffic was coming on Robinson along with all the school and everything else. So that's why we wanted to make sure that Matterhorn would be constructed, and it doesn't, in phase 1, essentially, in phase 1, and would be open to Fifth Street. So you'd have that whole thing, that whole thing open. So that's what I'm trying to clarify.
Hi, this is Ken Anderson, JK Architecture Engineering. I'm the civil engineer on the project. The original conditions of approval prior to the tentative map expiring had no condition regarding that as far as the haul route. The haul route, meaning construction traffic coming in, was always coming off of Robinson Street. And part of that reason is due to the drainage channels, both the Kings Canyon along Fifth Street and the Ash Canyon along what is going to be the future parallels the Robinson extension are built. And in order to have a crossing there, you have the large culverts. So the access, you can get access into portions of the site without crossing those channels based on the current development. So the original tentative map did not have a condition that that road had to be completely built prior to the work. Our initial improvement plans, we phased it out that way. We have separate, we have a current building permit for Robinson, the roundabout, and Matterhorn and Fifth Street expansion is one permit. And then we had separate permits for the 3 phases of the subdivisions, but it was not due to a condition.
I'm recalling the timing on the ditches was very important. The timing on the parks was really important, but I'm not recalling that we focused a lot on construction traffic. That's my recollection.
Would I be getting this confused with the one that went through Freight House? Is this where we're getting confused?
You're confusing it with the one at the end of Railroad. That was a big deal because they didn't want the construction traffic going down Railroad through that neighborhood, and they wanted the connection up to Fifth Street, which would have been going to the north to Fifth, connecting to Matterhorn at Fifth. That was the one where there was a strong focus on the timing of roadway construction and construction traffic.
Yes, we accept the conditions of approval.
Any questions from the board? Commissioners?
I have one. Do you know how close you are to 460?
Well, Heather is closely correct. We have only about 30 closings out there. I mean, if that, I think we are at 26. Lennar has a few. We're probably pretty close to, by the time you get to 400, we're getting ready to start vertical construction on our apartment site. That's 360 units. That's 3.5, 4 years of construction. And just, add that into the homes.
It's going to take you 4, it's going to, I
You're
guess
probably
that was
5
my
years.
question. It's going to take you 4 years to
4 or
build the
5
apartments.
years before you hit that threshold. So it's not like it happens tomorrow.
Okay, well, you answered the question then. Thank you.
Now I have another question, and this is just for general knowledge here, is that we approved this tentative map 4 years ago. Now we're back doing this tentative map. Are we going to come back in 4 years? I'm just trying to figure out where we're all at with this whole thing so that there's an understanding. When we approve something, what is the timeline for completion? What is the timeline where it comes back? Because you did say, oh, well, we started pulling permits and realized it had expired.
So I don't want to speak for Steve, but I can imagine that this won't happen again with one of his projects. So in terms of a tentative map, once it's approved by the board, it's good for 4 years. So what they need to do within 4 years is record their first final map. And then once the first final map is recorded, they have 2 years between that recordation and the next final map recordation. So they're developing this in 3 phases. It could potentially take up to 8 years to get the last final map recorded, and construction can take longer because the map's got to record before you can start construction on the houses themselves. So does that answer your question?
I'm done. Okay, and I need to bring it up for public comment. Okay, thank you.
Maxine Neitz for the record. I'm glad you're finally waking up to the issue of construction traffic. Those of us who are victims of Anderson Ranch East appreciate the fact that you're finally waking up to that for some other neighborhood. I've been making complaints about giant trucks going out on the local streets in my neighborhood when they promised, when they submitted their tentative map, that they promised that there would be no such traffic and that there would be no use to, even when their residents come in, that there would be no use of the local streets. I want to see them pull off that rabbit out of their hat. First of all, the staff report. The staff report wasn't very clear. I take it these are, even though it's split zoned, that these are all going to be single-family homes. I'd like to find out if that's true. Also, staff did not call out how much of this lot was SF6 and how much was MFD, so that any person looking at it and trying to make an analysis could intelligently do that. I guess they just figured we don't count. They also say that the finished floor shall be a minimum 3 feet above existing ground. This is another issue that we dealt with Anderson Ranch East. They promised us they would build at grade, existing grade, and then they brought in feet after feet after feet, ton after ton after ton of ground and raised up the level of their ground. If you drive along Mountain Street, which I no longer do because it's too depressing to do that, if you drive along Mountain Street, you will see that the buildings they built there are way, way, way above street level. And the poor people who live on the east side of Mountain Street have been completely cut off from any view of the sky or the mountains. There are at least 20 homes backing up to this on the east side, and so I assume that what's going to happen is they're going to build right up against those homes, and everybody that they sell to in this new phase 2 is going to get a chance to look down into their neighbors' backyards, bathrooms, bedrooms, and all of that. So I don't know why you included that wonderful piece of thing in there, but I don't like it at all. If this developer couldn't put it together after the first approval, why are we trusting him again? I mean, how many times are we going to go with a loser? Okay. And the last thing I want to talk about is the urban limit. This particular land is outside of the urban limit to the east. You're always saying how you start with small lots in the center of town and you grow to bigger lots on the outside of town, but this particular plan makes a liar out of that statement. These small lots on the outside, way outside of town and on the outside of the urban limit are anathema to good planning.
Chair and commissioners, thank you. Reviewing the bits that I can, I can't get oriented as to where the wetlands are, but it definitely brings up FEMA, and it definitely brings up a lot of consideration about flood plan and considerations of plains, earthquakes, and other considerations on this piece of property. I'm a bit surprised that the fire department allowed the footprint that it's allowing. I don't see real comfortable exits and entrances for the individuals. I don't know if it's going to be an association type situation for the streets. It almost seems like a closed neighborhood. And I'm a bit concerned that when we do pictures like this, that we don't give you the overview, back off of the property, give a bit of more of the understanding of the surroundings. I'm uncomfortable for the people that are going to live there. I don't feel that the routes out are such that it would accommodate easy evacuation under any circumstances of emergency, whether it was fog or smog or smoke, any of those concerns, or earthquake. It's jam-packed. I get it. I understand that it will lessen the amount of roads and streets and such like that, but I am also concerned about the traffic flow area. But it just doesn't seem like, how could the fire department have considered this without having Matterhorn considered earlier on in the considerations. And I just don't feel good with this. It may be, it could be, and it's going to be a while before we know type of situation. So while I'm not opposed to development, I would like to have, I know everybody's done a lot of work on this. It's been years in the process. I get that. But every time it comes back, it has a little bit of a change, and then we're not allowed to say, hey, at this point, we're not happy with it. We might have been more comfortable with it before. So thank you very much for your consideration. It's a hard deal. I just, on so many different levels, this just doesn't feel right. Thank you very much.
Betsy Strasburg, I have a quick question on this. Since the permits expired, when you, and I assume you're approving this, if you approve this, the 24 single-family residential units, will they be counted against this year's allocation of permits? That's my question.
Any further public comment? Seeing none. Heather?
Okay, so I'll start with Betsy's comment. So in terms of growth management and the number of residential units allotted per year, that's based on when a building permit to construct that residence is issued. So approving the tentative map doesn't have an impact on the allotment for that year. Once the developer gets far along in a process and they're ready to go vertical, that's when we start counting those units against the allotment for the year that it's constructed, not when it's approved. In terms of emergency routes, I know it's a little bit tough to see, especially since this is sideways, but this does have a roadway connection on the bottom left side to Phase 1. And there are connections to Robinson Street and Matterhorn through multiple different connection points there. So the fire department has reviewed this now twice over, and it does meet with the standards for secondary access for all of the different lots within the project. And in terms of floodways and things like that. So that was one of the primary elements of the specific plan for this area, was making sure that, number one, that the land use pattern was diverse, that there was a mix of residential and commercial, and that we addressed parks and schools and fire needs and things like that. But also one of the main elements of the specific plan is to really address the three major drainages that come from the mountains to the west, flow through Carson, and go through this area. So there are three major ditches that go through this property, and there's two of them that the developer was actually required to construct the channels to realign those drainages with Phase 1. So those have been constructed. You can see one of the big ones along 5th Street, and then there's another one that goes along Robinson Street. So I actually did take a look at those today too, and they are established wetlands at this point. But yeah, the drainage and flooding and all of that have been considered with the specific plan and are being reconfirmed with each tentative map. So they've done their studies, and they go through the process that they're required to ensure that they meet the FEMA requirements.
Commissioner Lloyd, for the record, I think this is going to be a question for the applicant. Just letting the applicants know they should come up here. I have two items. Lot number, can you go back to the other slide? Thank you. It's lot number 100 and 101. Where are the driveways? What road do they connect on?
Ken Anderson, JK Architecture Engineering. Are we talking about the two where?
It's like Duffer Peak Street and Sawmill Peak Drive.
Those two have a private, it'll be a private drive access. It's the shaded, it's called out as a common area. It'll be a paved area where those two access off of that location.
So a driveway is an open space,
Well, it's common area.
is labeled as open space.
Pardon me?
It's labeled as open space on the,
They're all common area elements that I guess it would, is that your LMA would maintain for those. They're not actually part of the parcels, so it's a separate parcel. That's why it's called out as common area or open space.
so a kid could go skateboarding on it, that's okay.
I mean, it could, yeah. I mean, we could call it common area, opens, I
I'm
mean,
just
it's.
curious, because you're gonna have property owners there who may expect that to be their private drive, so.
So, yeah, it is listed as an open space / common area. So I think that the depiction on here was really to identify the common areas
Okay.
within the subdivision per request from staff, so.
And then I have another question. Relay Peak Street, as it hits into lot 34 and 33, which on page 41 of your application, it's the preliminary site plan. It shows essentially a dead-end road from the current new subdivision. Why are we dead-ending a road from essentially a new subdivision into a subdivision that we're going to be putting in here?
That road was constructed with the Phase 1 plans and the tentative map. With this new development, after meeting with fire and it showing we provide 3 access points out of that, what we call 2A, 2B, providing the access points. That dead-end road in Phase 1 is shown on the improvement plans that are currently submitted. Now that with the tentative map being expired, they will be resubmitted, but that is going to be abandoned. So that portion of right-of-way, we're going to request to be abandoned, so it will not be a dead-end road. That stub road will be removed and joined into the 2 lots that are adjacent to that. So those lots will get wider in the future upon that abandonment.
And so those lots are not built out at this time?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. All righty. And anything else that you'd like to add? No. Okay. All right. And I'd like to bring it back to the board for a motion. Would like one of the commissioners like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of the tentative subdivision map SUB 2023-0061 based on the ability to make the required findings and subject to the conditions of approval.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Sure. I think since we've last met, the Board of Supervisors took up growth management. You'll recall this commission recommended a 3% growth with 2% for market rate and 1% for affordable housing. The board did go with 3% without a distinction between affordable units and market rate units. There was a bit of conversation on that, but I think a majority of the board felt that we hadn't even gotten close to the 3%, and they didn't anticipate that would happen, and they felt the program as it existed was sound. The mayor did have questions and about what is the definition of affordable housing or affordable housing developers, and felt absent that definition. It just was a flawed resolution. So that would be something which will segue into my next item for your next meeting. One of the items in the strategic plan that I'm supposed to be working on in fiscal year 24, which is the fiscal year we're in, is how to promote affordable housing, how to work with affordable housing developers. And so part of that is to understand from affordable housing developers, what are the challenges, how does it all work, right? And so at your meeting in August, if Cecilia hasn't had a chance to poll you, she will poll you to see if you're available to start a little bit earlier. And Bill Brewer from the Housing Authority, he's the executive director, and Matt Fleming, who's from another affordable housing group, and Mark Turner, who does market rate housing, have all agreed to be part of a roundtable with the commission to have a discussion about residential development, the development of affordable housing, the challenges as they see it, so that we can start to kind of understand how that all works in Carson City in the context of the strategic plan objectives. So we'll work on that, and then I'm meeting with Dan Yu from the DA's office, and so we may be ready to go forward with the development standards so that you can take a look at those in totality, because you haven't seen engineering's comments. But we're having some discussions on how to handle that right now. And
Well-
that's my report.
Hope,
Yeah.
question for you real quick.
Mhm.
Are you looking at more of a workshop format with the affordable housing developers and then an actual meeting then following?
Yes, that would be the idea for sure, a workshop. And I'm not sure how the development standards will be handled. That also may be a workshop. We're still having those conversations, whether it would be easier for you all to kind of engage in a workshop format versus a non-workshop format. And then you can have the public hearing on Title 18 and the development standards at one time.
Bring it forward for public comment, please.
Denny French, Carson City Planning and Chair. Thank you very much. Been a frustrating moment for me because I've really tried to understand this. And as it's been pointed out, using acronyms and different considerations is not helpful. It can mean anything. A guy in California is being sued because his license plate says, or it's actually another state, excuse me, anyhow, says go back home, basically, to the California people as far as letters, if you determine that's what that means. Anyhow, my thing is I'd really like to encourage the plain, it's just very simple. It's right here, excuse me. It's plain language. It's really put down as Plain Language Act. It really does make sense. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to paraphrase it even. Don't have my glasses on. I'm dealing with some issues right now, and that didn't help. So, okay, considering the time involved, I think you all would feel better if you didn't have to struggle so much with what you have to cover. You have to cover a huge amount of material. I only get to cover what I pinpoint, and then I get strategy towards that and work through it. So with what you're all doing, this act would actually help you as well, not just the public, which I think would be very helpful. We could be a lot clearer when we're asking for legal advice or when we're looking to hope to relate a question. We'd be able to frame it in ways that would be consistent with how it's written, not just our laymen to their legal. That interaction needs to start, and I think we really got to think of it. We're already having communication problems with, I feel, you all, and in just trying to relate in the way that would sound logical and legal and proper. So any help that we can all get to communicate better, I'm all for. As far as today, I'm discouraged. I just don't feel we're thinking enough of open spaces, our water resources, and different considerations. And I really think all this development is great for certain people, but not for the plants and animals that are on that land now. And we have to sell it, we have to develop, I get that. But whatever we can keep, we have to be very mindful of it and appreciate it as how precious it is. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, at the risk of having a dialogue, I just, and Denny knows this, but for everybody in the public, if anybody has questions, concerns, wants to understand an item better, we're always available. I mean, Denny pops in probably at least once a week, right, Denny? And so we're happy to help get the community at large up to speed so that they can engage thoughtfully with the commission. The commission, you all will touch base to make sure you understand your items, and the community at large, we offer that same service to them. Thank you.
I concur, but not every week. Thank you.
Betsy Strasburg. I'd like to make a recommendation. At the March 3rd workshop, we all talked about that there will be a future workshop on 17-09. So it's been about 6 months. So we'd like to see that happen in the near future. And if any of your commissioners can help us get that done, we really would appreciate it. The second thing on this affordable housing, I hope that's not going to be a 3-minute public comment, and it would be a workshop that involves all of the public. So we are interactive and upfront with what is being discussed or proposed. Thank you.
Hi, Karen Stevens for the record again. A lot of this meeting seemed to be based on the master plan, and we have to do this and this to make everything consistent. But how old is that master plan, and how long have we been talking about revising it? So I would really like to see some movement on that, because it's my understanding that master plan is going on 2 decades. And so maybe we should be working on that so we don't have to do these annual changes, even though the applicant or the owner of the property isn't applying for a change. So that's what I like to see, as well as going forward on 1709. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I should have added in my report, we have an RFP right now, which is a request for proposals. I won't just give you the initials. We have a request for proposals out right now for a planning consulting firm to do the update of our master plan. Per the strategic plan, that's to be completed in 2025. And so I think the responses aren't due until August from the consultants. And also, as part of that, we'll be hiring a part-time planner to assist us in being kind of the point person on that. And at this point, Paul Eswine has agreed to play that role. So I think that's going to be a huge asset as well. So we are aware that it's the board. It's coming from the board. The board has requested that we update the master plan. It's in the strategic plan for completion fiscal year 25. And so we'll begin working on it in fiscal year 24.
Maxine needs again, I just hope this outside consultant doesn't end up on the taxpayer's bill. But I know reality, I'm going to have to pay for that. I don't know where I'm going to get the money. Skip a few meals. I guess I can lose a few pounds. But that's again, you're putting something off on the taxpayers. We are done. We are done. We are done. I don't know how many times to tell you, we are done. We will not stand for any more money being spent that's going to flow down and come out of our pockets. I know you guys aren't paid, but the Board of Supervisors is, and I suggest the first thing they do is cut their own salary down to 0 and put that money towards the hiring of this outside consulting firm.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Sorry.